Welcome to the Momentum Ministry Partners podcast. This podcast is designed to provide momentum in our God-given roles of leadership as we partner together to equip today's Christian leaders for tomorrow's opportunities. Whether you're a pastor, youth leader, ministry volunteer, parent, or student, we want to be your go-to and most trusted resource for equipping and encouragement when it comes to your ministry and leadership influence. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy this episode.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Momentum Ministry Partners podcast. We're so excited that you're with us today and that we're going to learn a lot. We're going to talk about vision with Donny Varney. So we got the alliteration, Donny, the V's. I hear that you're going to keep it going too, aren't you?
We're going to try. We're going to try, Eric.
I love it. I love it. Well, Donny, you have led a lot of different ministries. And so if you're unfamiliar with who Donny is, if you're a new person, a guest checking out the podcast, we're excited that you're here. We're excited that you're with us today, and we're very excited about the opportunity to talk about vision. And so who needs to know what and when and why it matters. And so Donny has wore a lot of hats when it comes to ministry and your experience, and you've had wonderful opportunities to cast vision. And Donny, we're in a process right now, even at Momentum Ministry Partners, where we're trying to think through some of these things of where's God leading, how is he guiding and directing our organization. So it's apropos that we're talking about this today. What are your thoughts? Give us just a rundown of your history and kind of some of the different ministry roles you've had.
Yeah, for those who would be unfamiliar, I have worn a lot of different hats. Like you said, I've been in 3 or 4 different settings in ministry over the past 22 years. I was a youth pastor for 9 years. Then I ended up becoming an elder at a church while simultaneously being a gospel community group leader and a Sunday school teacher and things of that sort. I was also a student life director at a Bible college. And then most recently, for the past 10 years, I was a sports ministry pastor at a church in Akron, Ohio. And now I'm with Momentum. Even prior to that, though, I was a part of a couple other churches through some internships that I did and whatnot. So have spent a lot of time in the church. I've been a part of what some might consider good visions and maybe not so great visions, and different leadership styles and approaches to vision, if nothing else. And small churches, big churches, older churches, younger churches, et cetera. And been in a lot of different rooms to even see how various leadership groups process vision and how they go about accessing vision and participating in it, and ultimately trying to, lead other people through a particular vision. So it has been a fascinating journey that I've been on. I know I'm not alone. Many leaders have experienced, the good and bad and ugly of vision in their own ways and whatnot. So I don't know if I necessarily bring anything brand new to the table, but it certainly would be my perspective on some of the things that I feel like I've observed regarding access to vision. So I'm looking forward to talking it through with you.
Honestly, Donny, sometimes the best ways to learn are when it doesn't go as planned. And so I appreciate even your willingness to share some of those different contexts and things that you've seen. I'll chime in from time to time, but you hit the nail on the head. I think even in just understanding, being able to communicate what we've done, what worked, what didn't work. So that to that end, this conversation hopefully will be helpful to all of our church partners, ministry professionals, pastors. We really do want to help you kind of just better understand how the clarity, communication, accessibility, even of vision, how it affects the trust, the culture, and effectiveness within your church, within a ministry. So to that end, Donny, let's kind of dive in here. And I will preface to our listeners, I am currently at Ignite Middle School Camp. So there may be students coming in and out of this room. I'm kind of tucked away in a little corner of Ignite Middle School Camp. And last night we saw Josiah Bogue, who is one of our worship leaders at Momentum Youth Conference. Josiah is the speaker here, and he shared the gospel last night, and we saw about 24 students pray to receive Christ for the first time. So it has been so fun getting to be here and hang out with a couple hundred middle school students. But just in case for our listeners, if there's any distractions or if you see me looking around, it's because I'm watching middle school students fishing and doing the zip line and all kinds of stuff out the window here. So, all right, Donny, let's talk about vision. One of the things we like to do on the Momentum podcast is define our terms. So when we say vision, oftentimes, even in church world, we say vision and it means X, Y, and Z, and somebody else says vision and it means A, B, and C. How do you define vision? Give us kind of your definition and how would you implement it in the context of a local church?
Well, once again, I have also heard, I would say, for sure dozens, it might be hundreds of definitions of vision through the years. And there is a common thread, I think, that most definitions carry. And I'd love to hear yours as well, Eric. But I would say it's just something along the lines of taking people to a place that currently doesn't exist, or giving people, sharing with them, showing them, taking them, whatever word you want to use, to a place into the future that currently doesn't exist. And you can add a lot of different really cool, fun words around it. But at the end of the day, it's something out there that isn't yet realized. And you are trying to describe and show and take people to that place out in the future. So that isn't a clean definition, but it's something along those lines is how I would think of it. I'd love to hear
Super
your
helpful
thoughts. Yeah.
We at our church in Maryland that I was a youth pastor at, we kind of did a revamp of our mission and our vision. And so the stickiest way that we found to communicate it was just the process of like, your vision is where we're going and the mission is how we're going to get there.
Yep.
So the core values we would implement, those are kind of the mile markers along the way to help us evaluate if we're going in the right direction and the speed at which we're getting there. So yeah,
I love
vision, mission. For some they're synonymous. For others, they're very different. But understanding before you even figure out vision, understanding how you define the term to make sure that you're speaking the same language is a huge deal.
Yeah.
So, Donny, what happens maybe when a church has lost its vision and they're trying to, like I just mentioned, they're trying to do a revamp? And how would you even know if you've lost your vision as a church?
There's several different things that I think you can look at from simply being able to repeat back the vision would be an easy way to see, like, man, I don't even know if it's ever stuck or if you could put it in a word or a phrase or a paragraph, and people, if you were to ask them and they can't say it, well, that'd be one indicator. I think a stronger indicator that I would look at is if you're leading people in the right way, then your top tier leaders, they don't have tasks, they have responsibilities, and they probably have more than one. And as you look at those responsibilities, you as the leader, you would prioritize those responsibilities probably in a certain way. Yet you're trying to empower people, you're trying to let them lead the vision that you feel like you've done a good job of setting out. And if there is if what you would be prioritizing with those responsibilities is not lining up with whatever you would say are your key leaders and how they're prioritizing those responsibilities, then that would be an indicator, probably one of the bigger ones to me, that you're like, I think we're not on the same page here, because in my mind, I feel like it's so clear where we're going and what our mission is, and this is what's important. And based off of like the 4 or 5 core things that I've entrusted, A leader here, B leader here, C leader here. Like, I feel like we're almost in reverse order of what we're doing here. So that would be one of the big ones for me. I'd love to hear from you some of the things that you might think of when you're like, I don't know if the vision right now is catching the way that it should.
Yeah. No, I like what you said because I think if people can't remember or tell you what it is, then for sure you probably don't have one. If you're like, no, we had one 20 years ago and it's written on the hallway down the children's wing, or where, if it's written somewhere and you have to like go back and read it to remember what it is, that's probably a sign and indicator as well. If your people can't say it. We did this. We had our staff. We had everybody on our staff, part time, full time. We had them write it down, just kind of pop quiz at a staff meeting. And what's our vision statement? What are we about as a church? And it was fascinating to see, even though we had been kind of repeating it and trying to get everybody on the same page, the different parts of it that people were missing. So I like to think it needs to be short, simple, sweet. Keith Manier calls it a portable, memorable phrase. I like that.
Yep.
You can take it with you. It's memorable. You can say it in a breath. So
Yep.
kind of to that end of having a vision statement is big. But Donnie, when people in the church, they only have maybe part of it, right? If they only hold on to like, we're disciple makers, or we want to be about gospel movements, or if they can only remember kind of a piece of it, how do you help them hear the whole thing? Or even maybe the better question is, how do they buy in? What does that process look like? And kind of give us the healthy side of having vision and having a culture of vision where there's people are buying into the vision. What's your process for implementing that and helping the church get on board?
Well, it's probably not great news for if we're talking to like the leader of in that situation, because that's not a great spot to be in. And the news that I would share, though I think is accurate, it's not easy, and that is there's just an enormous amount of sacrifice, that personal sacrifice at the very top that has to take place, and there's a price to be paid, and there are sacrifices to be made, and the leader is the one that goes first. And that example of, I just think there's no clearer way to communicate what it is that you're trying to show people of where you're going than for you as a leader to be going there and kind of doing, I guess what you might say, whatever it takes to do that. And usually that's what helps it catch. That's what helps people to buy in. That's what helps people to be inspired by it because they're seeing an example of it. And they're probably starting to observe, hopefully, some fruit that is coming as a result of that leader or that leadership team as they are sacrificing for it. But very rarely, if ever, are you going to get a large quantity of people to go first if the leader, him or herself, hasn't already gone first to sacrifice for that vision.
Yep.
What about you?
For
What do you
sure.
think?
Oh man, honestly, I think the buy-in is going to exist when you see exactly right. The leader has bought in, but they're passionate about it.
Yeah.
And I think too, when it's not a stretch, when you're like, this makes sense for our church,
Yep.
the dots connect. I can see it. That's where you're going to really start seeing the rubber meet the road, and you're going to get some traction on it.
Totally agree. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So Donnie, help us. You have what is it? 6 kind of key things to implementing a vision within a local church. Break that down for us. Give us your list of what these things are. I love me a good Donnie list.
I know it is a disease of mine, so I apologize in advance. It's the only way I keep things straight in my mind, so it probably only helps me and nobody else. But I have been told from time to time, someone's like, "Man, that's great. I stole all of those." And I'm like, "That's great, man." So I call this giving people a vision for how to access vision. So that's what these V's are. Yes, they all start with the letter V, and they are all somewhat sequential. And if anyone actually remembers the Road to Replacement podcast that we did, I had like 5 of them 5 R's. And then there was like a dividing line where I'm like, this is like kind of all like level 1 of what it takes to replace yourself. And then these other 5 R's are like the real test of someone's faithfulness in their leadership. The same idea actually with this vision. The first 3 V's that we're going to talk about, I would say this is someone who is contributing or is a participant in the current vision. The second set of V's, the last 3 V's, this is someone who is helping define the future vision. So first set is participating in the current vision of your church or your ministry organization. Second set of V's is this is someone who is helping define the future vision of where you're going. So it's actually really helpful to distinguish those. Nice. Having said that, okay. The first V is you volunteer for the vision. The second is you're increasing volume to the vision. The third V is you're adding value to the current vision. So anyone can do that. You might not even fully know what the vision is, but you've just been a part of a church or an organization or a ministry or whatever the context might be. And, generally speaking, as you're, talking to people and you're a part of the body of Christ, you're like, this seems like a good thing that I'm generally speaking aligned with. And so you find yourself, you're like, you know what, I'm going to volunteer to be a part of this vision. As you volunteer, a second step up to that is you might end up, I'm calling it increasing volume. You might take what is there and you might expand upon it or make it bigger, make it louder, make it more impactful. And then the add value is similar to volume, but you might be able to add your own personality, your own flavor, your own set of wisdom, insights, or just your time, treasure, and talents, as we might talk about. All of that is being an active participant in current vision. And it's a wonderful opportunity that most people have in a particular local church setting where they can have access to vision and be an active participant in the current vision by not just volunteering, but truly being able to increase the volume of it, the effectiveness of it, and adding value to it. So that's, and I could share some stories for sure to give a little bit of context of even specifically at my journey in that. But I'd love to hear your thoughts even as I share those first 3 V's, Eric.
Super helpful, Donny. I think I like where you're going of creating the volunteer opportunities. So that's kind of the buy-in that we were talking about a minute ago. And then even the last part of that of like adding value. So I guess as I'm hearing this, if I'm a local church pastor, if I'm leading a ministry, an organization, whatever, and I want to have a vision, and I want the vision to be clear. Give us the example of how would you implement those 3 things within the context of your church, your ministry? Because I think if you can give us an example of that, maybe of what does that look like for the leader to say, this is the vision, and then how do you bring people along? Maybe it's concentric circles. Do you start with your staff members? Like how do you have them volunteer, add volume, and then do the add value? Walk us through that.
So one story is from 2012 to 2014. It was just a 2.5 year time. I'll give a shout out to this church. He's still the pastor there. His name is Alex Tunnicliffe, Redemption Hill Church in Kingsford, Michigan, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And I just fell in love with this guy, Alex. I just loved his heart. I loved what he was doing. I loved every single Sunday as me and my wife. And at that time, our 2 kids, a third was on the way. And we were just falling in love with this church. I don't think I could have told you exactly what the vision was fully. I probably would have read it on the website because I would have been that kind of a person who would have wanted to know. I was able to, over the first 6 months, I had the privilege, I know not everyone would, but I was able to have a lunch with him and his wife and really get to know him over, the course of a meal. And I started to just to ask if I could volunteer. And in this context, that it worked out, and I was able to do that. And I started with their youth group, and I just was there, just helping, again, observing, seeing, and trying to draw connections based off of. And there were phrases, there was a culture that was coming out of this ministry that was attractive, I think, to and it would prove out because there were a lot more people that wanted to be a part of it. And so within 2 years, I went from just being someone who was sitting in the pews. There were pews there at that church, which is great. And if you don't have pews, that's great too. But to helping out with the youth group, to subbing as a Sunday school teacher, to eventually becoming the high school Sunday school teacher. Then I started to attend what they called a gospel community group. Then I subbed one time, and then I started to be the question asker, the facilitator. Then the following year, I became the one who was leading that gospel community group. And then just as we were leaving the church, because I felt like we were being called to Akron, Ohio to take on this sports ministry pastor role. For the last 3-4 months, I was one of the elders at that church. So that all happened in like a 2.5 year time period. I'm not saying that's how it should be for everyone at all. But all I can say is if you're just a human being at a church and there's something good that you're connecting with and that you're aligned with and that you're resonating with, I don't think it's a bad option to start participating and to start helping, to start contributing, to start volunteering, to start increasing the volume of what it is, to start adding value. And I think through that process, you learn probably more quickly what truly is the vision, as opposed to, well, I know their statement of faith, I read what their values are, I saw that mission statement, and you kind of immediately, rightly or wrongly, make a judgment call on what that ministry is. I would not go that route. I would first start to participate in it and see where that alignment is. And generally speaking, that's not a bad place to start. So I know I answered the question the opposite way. I kind of did it as a participant as opposed to what the leader would do, but that's kind of more of a challenge that I would pose to anyone, and is to start there.
I like it. I think that's super helpful, even just to have from your own personal experience a picture of what that looks like and how you were able to get involved and engage in that opportunity. Yeah.
And if I am the leader of that church, I think that if you have someone who is very quickly wanting, you're like, hey, I've been here for 2 weeks and I would like to become a member of your church. Or, hey, I've been here for this. I've sat and I've watched one of your episodes online, and now I'm here and I would like to become an elder at your church, or whatever the conversation is. I would say it is okay to slow all of that way down and start down this path of the volunteering, the increasing volume, and adding value. And even then, there's all kinds of wisdom and discernment and things to factor in as far as a process that you might want to go through for sure with that. But I just think that's a great place to, as you're as a leader trying to think through, how am I going to even be able to know as a leader if there's a good connection and where I should be placing people and how much access to the vision they should have.
Right.
Have them start as an active participant in the current vision, before you would ever give them an opportunity to help define a future vision, which is the second part of the V's.
Okay. So before we move on to the last half, the volunteer part is very clear. I think people are going to catch that and understand it's participation, it's getting the buy-in. The third one of adding value, I think is clear. Go a little bit deeper in that second piece. When you say help increase the volume, that part, share maybe another example of what that might look like that would help illustrate or even define what you mean by that and what that might look like.
Yep. I think the volume piece is increasing, and I'm just going to use like some concrete examples. It might be a program that church is running. It might be a Sunday school class. It might be a youth group activity. It could be, fill in the blank of whatever the thing is that you're kind of volunteering in. The value part to me is when you're bringing something that is still within what you would feel like is the what you're observing, but you're kind of bringing in your own set of gifts to that, and it's in a way that still fits within that current program or structure. The volume is you are, I think of it as you're trying to grow that ministry. So you're doing what you can to, maybe it's grow the numbers, maybe it's to grow the finances, maybe it's to grow the resources, maybe it's to grow the opportunity, but you're like, this is a good thing, and I'm going to try to add volume to it. I'm not going to try to mute it or to change stations, but on this current station that we're on, I feel like I have the ability to add volume to it and grow it in the current state that it's in.
Good. Okay. Very helpful.
Okay. Cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. What are the last three?
So view, voice, and vote. So I was and still am part of Grace Church Bath campus in Akron, Ohio. And a phrase that I'm now 11 years later, I've heard over and over and over again is this idea of prior and privileged information. And we have this thing called a leadership summit, and it's a once a year leadership gathering. And there's all sorts of some of it's pretty set in stone, and then other things it's a little bit loose in terms of like the criteria that it might take to be a part of that gathering. This would just be one example, not all the examples, but one example where I feel like it's a relatively healthy thing that this church does to all of those leaders that are there. Let's say in our context, it might be like 300. In some other churches' context, it might be 10, which is like fine, whatever, wherever it is. Those people in that room didn't define the vision. They didn't even have a voice in the vision, but they had prior and privileged information, a view of that vision that actually says something to them. It says to them, we value you. We see you as a leader. We want to give you a heads up. Maybe it's a 6 months in advance warning, might be 6 days, 6 hours. But it's like, this is where we think we're going. And before we go there, or before we go public with whatever this is, we want to kind of bring you in and make sure that you have a chance to process it. You get the heads up. You have the ability and opportunity to have that conversation with your family, to think it through of what your involvement might be, where you could see yourself playing a leadership role, et cetera, et cetera. And just giving that space and giving them a view of the vision ahead of time is, I think, a really great, I don't think you have to do it, but I think it's a great strategy in terms of giving people an access, unique access to vision that kind of helps them to see themselves as a leader within the vision of your church. So that's
really good.
The viewpoint.
So
Any thoughts on that one?
The first one is view
Mm-hmm.
or viewpoint.
View.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love that, because I think helping them see the vision in right perspective within the context of their life, their ministry, how they're buying in, and even with that fourth one of how they might add value to the work of the ministry or the church. And so at that leadership summit that you're referencing, I happen to know you've got not just your church staff there, but you've got small group leaders, you've got the head, people within all the different teams that your church would have, and then you've got kind of your key people that have influence. They may not necessarily have a title, they may not necessarily have a role within, they're not all paid volunteers, but the head, but they're key influencers and the people who need to understand. I like what you're saying, the view and how that fits within. They need to have a vision for what that would look like, the vision of the church to implement within their ministry and their context, their circle of influence, if you will.
Yeah. And I think the
Good.
gift that you've given them is just the gift of time.
Yeah.
You're saying, you now have margin, you have space to kind of, to maybe dream your own dreams within this vision. We're not asking you to change the vision. We're not asking at this point for you to have a voice in the vision. But what we do want to give you is some time to process it, to think about it, and to find your own way and your leadership within this vision. And I think that's a gift that a lot of leaders will respond to and want to engage further in because you kind of gave them that gift.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's very good. All right. What's the next one? Kind of break that one down a little bit.
Next one is voice. And this one still doesn't necessarily mean that they are fully like defining the vision, but their voice is heard. And you are kind of on purpose as a leader saying, I want your voice. I want your feedback. I want to hear your perspective. I want you to factor in your experiences. I want you to give me your knee-jerk reaction to how this sounds. I want you to tell me what you would, go home and think about it and maybe talk to a few people and come back and share your thoughts. Your voice is important to this. So they aren't necessarily defining it, but because they have a voice in it, I think it ends up being a well-received gift that you're giving another tier of leaders an opportunity to speak into that vision and to give feedback. The voice can also be helping define it. So maybe as the leader, you're like, I don't actually know for sure what this should look like. And so you're like, can you help shape the what this vision is, et cetera. So it could go either way, whether it's actually helping to define the vision, or if this is what I think the vision is. What do you think about it? But it's the expectation. As I even thought about this conversation today, Eric, I felt like where this goes sideways so quickly is and I can also share a story or two of where I've been before with this, is the expectations of where your voice is in that process. Because depending on the size and the scope, the depth, the breadth of the organization or the church, you might have this conversation of vision might have 6 or 7 or 8 layers to it. And you might think you have this kind of a voice in it, but the reality was, and I don't want to say it's like higher or less, but it still had a lot more channels to go through. So anyway, that voice is the expectations of where you're at, and that is helpful as a leader.
That's really good. Donny, would you say I realize that voice is number 5 in your list of 6, but as you're sharing, are these, would you say these are steps in order to take? Are they like progressive, like you need to do number 1 in order to do number 2? Is it like, or is it more of like thinking through concentric circles of like, okay, if I'm the senior pastor, I need to meet with maybe our elder board or our staff, and then we're going to kind of go out from there. And so when you get to this voice piece that you're talking about, on the level that maybe you're 4 or 5 steps down the path towards implementing your vision.
Yep.
Is this a point where now you're getting, maybe for the first time, a new voice in? Or how does that work? How does that voice kind of play in? Maybe for some it's at the beginning. That's a key piece in every stage. I don't know. Help that make sense maybe.
Yeah, I think of it as levels that you want to strategically think through. I hopefully it's assumed, but like I don't. This is literally just a tool that like I have to think through. You can come up with whatever kind of a system you want. Maybe yours has 12 steps. Maybe it's 2. I'm identifying what I think could be 6 different steps that you can. I think it's helpful for a leader to sometimes we make a mistake of maybe too quickly letting someone in on our vision, and that's why it goes sideways, is because I thought I knew this person, I thought I could trust their voice, but next thing I know, now we have a church split and they took the trust that I gave them and now they have a different vision for it, and I gave them too much leadership access, and how did this happen? I'm like, well, come up with something where you can kind of go systematically through something so that you can hopefully avoid some of that. So that's where I wouldn't have, even if you lose someone because they've wanted to have a voice maybe more quickly than you were ready for, that's a better scenario than giving them a voice too quickly in most cases. I can't say for all. You have to, as a leader, know, are you a careless delegator or are you a control freak? And probably whichever one you are, you might need to either add more steps to it or remove some steps. It just kind of depends on where you're at there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. That's very helpful.
All right, cool.
All right. What's number 6? Give it to us.
So one quick story, and then I'll give it to 6.
Yeah, perfect.
So this has happened recently with me. I shouldn't say too recently. It was years ago, but the story was I'm in a meeting. I'll even just say it. I'm a fairly new sports ministry pastor at Grace Church Bath Campus. For those who know that context, it's a larger church, a lot of different people on staff, a lot of different ministry departments, a lot of different just meetings in general every day. And I was enjoying that. I was loving it. I thought it was very invigorating. I love the opportunity to have my voice be heard as a leader within the church. And so I will never forget being in this one room of other leaders at the church where I think there's maybe about 8 of us. And we spent 6 months. I can't say if it was weekly or bi-weekly. It might have been bi-weekly for about 6 months working through this project that we were going to take to the whole church. And as a relatively new staff member, I took it seriously. I brought my A game every single meeting. I had all kinds of notes, all kinds of ideas. I lost sleep over it. I probably had a few acronyms in there and some things that were alliterated, as you might imagine, and all of the things. And 6 months later, I felt like my voice was heard, and I was pretty excited about that. And what I failed to understand, and I think I take the blame for it because I didn't ask enough questions. I don't think anyone was hiding it from me. I just didn't. I was kind of new to the whole thing. Is you're like, well, Donny, now that step is done, we're going to take it to this group of people, and that's going to go through a 3-month process. Then we're going to take it to this group of people, and we're going to see from that angle what that looks like. And then we're going to take it to here, and they're going to be able to do this with it. And then we're going to take it here, and then we'll, by that point, we'll figure out what we're doing. And I'm actually not exaggerating, as maybe as mind-blowing as that might be for some people in their context. That's literally what was happening. And I was just like, oh. So 6 months later, for the most part, even though my voice was heard in those meetings, my idea of how my voice was going to be heard, I would, this is what I should say. I thought as we were doing that, I thought that I was getting a vote, but I was really just getting a voice. And if I would have known from the beginning that I wasn't going to be a decision maker in this, I was just offering my voice, then that would have helped so much. And I think there's a lot of times we as leaders, we kind of make people think that they're going to be the decision maker. And what actually you're asking for is just simply their voice. And it's important and it's critical. And if I would have actually realized that's what was being asked of me, I might have maybe, I don't want to say I wouldn't have like given as much effort and whatnot, but my expectations would have been different. I would have been able to serve more freely. I would have not taken things as personally. I would have been able to sort of just practically separate my ideas with like, there's going to be a lot of other people who have a lot of different ideas. And I think it would have actually given me more joy in ministry during those 6 months as I was figuring out how to invest. But the expectation was lost on me and I felt completely out of the loop. I actually felt embarrassed. I felt like I hadn't done something fully right. And it was painful. I took the whole thing personally, but looking back, I'm like, I think I just saw myself in the wrong seat for this. And if I would have saw it differently, it would have been better. So anyway, that's just one story of many.
No, that's very helpful. I'm guessing number 6 is vote.
I know. Spoiler alert.
You did. Yeah, I think
I said that
a little bit ago. Yeah.
So
No, that's good.
And that might look different in every church's context as far as what a vote is. And I don't think the purpose of this podcast is to get into all of the ways in which voting might occur at your local church, whether that's at a membership level, congregant level, deacon level, elder level. And there's probably a lot of different places where there might be a decision that needs to be made and who's making that decision. I just think it's important if you're the one who is the leader or you're on a leadership team that you just kind of make it clear who's making decisions and who isn't. And it's not because there aren't other leaders in your organization. It's just that this is the group of people who has that weight and that stewardship and that responsibility to like actually make that decision. And if all goes well, maybe a lot of the time, those who have sacrificed for it, volunteered for it, added value to it, had a viewpoint of it, had a voice, whatever they were contributing and whatever the trajectory of where that should be going, maybe the decision's almost already made and you're just kind of stamping your approval on it. Other times you have to make a painful decision that you don't really want to make, and it might be upsetting to some people, but you feel like it's what you need to do. So that clarity and expectations, like we've said a few times now, is pretty critical.
So Donny, I think in this, I like these 6 things. I think they're very helpful to give a grid work or a framework of how to maybe go about thinking how to implement your vision, how to cast a healthy vision, how to strategically bring people into the vision of your church. But where my mind is going now, with you kind of even sharing that recent story of, you being a part of that team and thinking that you're going to speak into that and maybe even have a vote and a role. How do you think most pastors, how do you think that they are able to determine like how much access of the vision do people get and when? Like what's a healthy balance or a healthy process for that to work through? How do I unroll this and who gets to kind of weigh in on the different levels? Like for the normal pastor, give us maybe some thoughts on that, what that might look like.
You're going to think that this is some sort of like a self-serving promo, but I honestly would say this is again how my mind works. I would say go back to the podcast that talked about the road to replacement. That is supposed to be 10 levels of measuring someone's faithfulness. And it's not perfect. I would challenge you to think of your own version of faithfulness. But when I read the Bible, faithfulness is what is the premium, but practically how you measure that and that trust level that you have with someone. They don't have to possess all of the leadership ability that you could ever imagine on planet Earth in order to have a voice in your organization, your church. But thinking some of those things through, I think is a way to go about that. And it's helpful. And it's not, we actually talked about this in that podcast, but sometimes it's just as much or more a reflection on you as the leader as it is the people you're trying to lead. And so you need to for sure beat yourself up over and over again and ask yourself, what am I not doing? If you've had someone in your church for years and years, and it doesn't seem like they're yet at a place where they could or should be being a voice or a vote, you should probably, as the leader, first think through, what am I missing? What am I not doing to get this person to that? Because I see that potential. I think they would want that, but I maybe I'm not doing something to help lead them. So, yeah.
All right, let's take this one step further then.
Okay.
Why do you think so many pastors, they hesitate to share their full vision with others? I think a lot of times, and maybe you're communicating pieces of it, but walk us through that.
I would say several things. One is they might be insecure. I know I feel that way. My every idea I've ever had literally always feels amazing to me as long as I keep it to myself. And sometimes it never gets out of our house because my wife will be like, I literally don't understand what you're talking about. I'm like, oh, okay, I got to start over again. Or the second I say it out loud to some people, they start to pick it apart. And I'm like, okay, this isn't going to go anywhere. So you go through that enough times in life and you're like, I don't want to tell anybody this because I'm pretty sure they're going to hate on it. So then there's that insecurity. And now you're like, and now people are always wondering and questioning and trying to figure out what is it that he or she wants? Where are they trying to go? I don't fully know. Well, it might be because that leader is very insecure and they're not ready. They kind of want you to figure it out and guess, but they're afraid if they kind of put all their cards on the table, so to speak, people are going to pick it apart. And now so it's an insecure. So that'd be one. Do you agree or disagree with that? Have you seen that before? Yeah,
totally. 100%. Yeah,
100%. I think sometimes they don't have one. I think that's a reality. They just don't have one. So that's why you don't hear it. And then maybe a third that I would think of is maybe they just don't realize just how critical and important a clear, concise vision is. And so they're just not valuing it. They probably do have it, but in their mind, they're like, that's something that we can, every 5 years, we're going to remind everyone this is kind of what we're doing. But unless you're going to force them to do it, they're not going to make that a regular rhythm that's going to find its way into every single conversation and culture of your organization or church. So they just don't see it as important as we would say it is, because I would say it is critical.
Yeah.
Any other?
All right, Donny.
That's not all of them.
No.
Do you have any other additions to that one?
No. Where my mind is going is because I can see that completely. I think what you're saying is spot on, and I'm guessing if we were to drill a little bit deeper, you could even give us maybe some common mistakes that pastors, when they do have it, when they do have the vision and they do have it and they're confident about it, what are maybe those mistakes then that they would make in communicating it? Mm-hmm. Like what have you seen happen, or maybe learning from a personal experience?
Yeah. I would say common mistakes might be giving too much too quickly. It's going to be extremes. Either you're giving too much, you're not giving enough.
Yep.
You're not giving it often enough, or you're giving it to the wrong group of people in the wrong order. So I think it's all of the above. So even just take those six V's, and if you were to kind of flip those on its head and reverse the order, and that's how you go about giving access to vision, just imagine what that might look like in your setting. So I think that is some common mistakes.
Super good.
Yeah.
Donny, thank you for engaging with us in this conversation. It's been very, very helpful. I know I'm learning things and can have significant takeaway from this, even in our ministry here at Momentum. We hope to our listeners that this has added value to you in helping you implement, execute, and communicate your vision within your local church. Donny, any last thoughts? Anything else you want to share with us?
Just the longer people get to know me, I hope this becomes pretty clear. I'm sure it's obvious just because they listen to me and they're like, I'm not sure if this guy really knows too much what he's talking about. Is I'm a learner for life, and I figure it out as I go. And anything that I feel like I am learning, it is almost always through mistakes that I've made. And it's just a commitment to get back up again. And keep trying. So it's just the best that I've got. But I just want to make sure that that's clear. Anytime you have something that is alliterated or an acronym, you're like, oh, so he's trying to say he's got the whole thing figured out. I'm like, no, that's just best I got. So just want to make sure that's clear.
Bro, I think it's very clear. And I think our audience is learning your heart and the gift that you are, because as you're sharing these principles, the reality is the Holy Spirit allows context and perspective. And so, Donny, I think we're just called to do our part, and we'll let God do his.
Yep.
And when we kind of stay in our lane and let God show off, then good things will happen in our churches, in our ministry, and we'll get to just see how we get to be a part of the kingdom impact that God's made a way for us to have, which is really cool. Super cool.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you, Donny.
Yep.
Thank you to our listeners. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us for this episode. We hope you found it to be valuable. And if you did, would you share it with someone else in your network who might enjoy it? Also, would you please go on and subscribe, rate, and review it? That way you don't miss any more, and somebody else will be able to find it too. Also, because we want to be your trusted resource, if you have a question or topic that you would like us to discuss on an upcoming episode, send that to us via email to info@buildmomentum.org, or you can send us a DM on any of our social media platforms. You can find us there at Momentum Ministry Partners. Also, if you need more information on our ministry, be sure to check out our website at buildmomentum.org. Thank you so much, and we hope to see you next time.